All right, Mark here again, bringing information. So my last video you guys been watching, I've been talking about breakups and how to handle breakups, how to cope and deal with breakups. So what's interesting is I talked about when two people split, it's the equivalent, or it is it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's analogous to an atom split, and then when an atom splits, tremendous amount of energy, uh, potential energy, is released. So when two people split, energy is released, and as I said, the person who leaves, the energy that they step or ascend into is called electropositivity, and the energy that the person who's left behind descends into is electronegativity. And I want to talk about the person who's in the electronegativity state, the electronegative state, and how to work their way out of the electronegative state. Now, I would be the person in the electronegative state because my lady decided to walk away. So because she walked away, that leaves me in the electronegative state. And it's very important that I'm cognizant and not aware or ashamed to be in that state. You can't be ashamed or unaware. If you're unaware of that you're in that state, then you're in trouble. So what's going on within the brain? Let's talk about this now. When I mentioned before, when two people come together and they unite, energy is released as well, and the brain secretes a lot of what's called endogenous opioids. Right. Endogenous opioids are the opioids that are naturally found and secreted within the brain. It's namely produced in the VTA, ventral tegmental area, or the pleasure circuitry of the brain. And these opioids are considered endogenous, right, because they are naturally produced within the brain, as opposed to synthetic opioids, which are produced outside, heroin, morphine, so on and so forth. So when a person is in a relationship, again, the brain secretes a lot of these endogenous opioids in high dosage. And when a person is when the splitting of the relationship occurs and the person falls into the electronegative state, these endogenous opioids all of a sudden are mitigated or cut off altogether. And the brain has what's called opioid receptors, and there are namely three opioid receptors. They're mu, uh, kappa, and delta. Yeah, kappa, delta, and mu are the three types of opioids, or the three type of opioid receptors that are found in the VTA, the ventral tegmental area of the brain. And these receptors are what's responsible for addictive behavior. They're responsible for reward, for the pleasures, as well as for pain. So when you go through the breakup, all of a sudden, just like with a drug, literally, it's like with a drug. When a person comes off of a drug, or they're going through the process of weaning themselves off of some kind of a drug, they go through the withdrawal stage. And what's going on in the brain is that the receptors that are used to receiving the endogenous opioids, which again, endorphin, dopamine, serotonin, these drugs, the receptors start to actually they start to hunger, they start to thirst, right? They really want. It's like, what's going on? We've been getting this secretion of this opioid, and all of a sudden it just cuts off. That's it. It stops. So now the body begins to go through again withdrawal, and the reason for that is because the neurons or the cells in the brain again are accustomed to its fix, or a certain amount. It's a certain dose. So the neurons begin to go into a state of shock. Then the CNS, which is the central nervous system, also begins to go into a state of shock, because, again, it's used to a certain amount of endorphin being released or secreted over a period of time. And now it all of a sudden stops because the person walks away. So this is what actually starts to go on in the biology, in the anatomy of the brain and of your body. And this is why you go through the pain, the overall, just the comprehensive pain that you feel when a relationship ends. It's the equivalent of, again, someone stopping a drug cold turkey, and therefore your body begins to like I said, you go through a shock stage. and the body just begins to rebel against itself. It rebels. It's fighting. It wants that drug. And this is how addictive behavior patterns are formed and fashioned. And as again, like I said, now this is the biology of what spurs you or encourage and goads or cajole you into chasing the person. But I mentioned in the last video, you never want to chase because there's no frequency matching. It's called frequency or brainwave entrainment. If there's no frequency matching or brainwave entrainment, the person will never come. You'll only continue to get the opposite of what you are desiring, which is the person back. You'll only push them further as a result of a lack of frequency matching or brainwave entrainment. So that wouldn't work. But I'll kind of lost my thought for a second there. Yeah. So what's important though for us to understand is that while we're going through the process of the breakup, it's going to take time, right? And I made mention before, don't try to distract yourself with dating other people or seeing other people. That doesn't work. That's only going to put you into a lower frequency. You're already in the electronegative state. So to do anything that's counterproductive to that state will only sink you deeper. Let's say you're on the second floor of the electronegative state. By dating or trying to rebound or use others to assuage your state, now you put yourself on the first floor, and every time you do that, now you go into the basement. So you constantly put yourself into a lower state of electronegativity when you do that. So the best thing to do is to go through it cold turkey. But here's the thing: use the moment to be. Also, when you do the rebound process of dating or not just dating, just trying to hang out with people, hanging out with friends and going out and doing things, which in and of itself is not a bad thing, but contextually it's no good, because what's happening is you're not allowing again, I'm sorry about that. You're not allowing yourself to develop. Like, breakups are part of evolutionary tools. I know you've never heard this before. I've never heard that before. I just kind of thought of it. Like, breakups are part of evolution. They're evolutionary tools to actually evolve you, to move you into your higher state, higher self, right? Through pain comes growth. Right, with growing pains, right? So when you start to run around and hang out and do all these different things to distract the pain or distract the process of the breakup, the entities, the energies that are working on you and through you and in you, when you do that, when you try to distract yourself, you are becoming the equivalent of a codependent. You're not allowing yourself to be self-sufficient, self-determined, or self-actualized. You're actually allowing yourself to become a codependent, because you're dependent on that social setting. You're dependent on that drink. You're dependent on that lounge. You're dependent on that club scene. You're dependent on that person or or persons. You're dependent on external factors to modify or to alter or to stabilize an internal condition. I'll say it again. You now are dependent on external conditions or external factors to stabilize an internal situation or scenario. So that will never work. It will only be band-aids or temporary fixes until the actual body starts to crave that companion or that person that left. Your body will naturally start to crave the company or the drug that person was stimulating, because remember, the person is a stimulant to you as you were to them, but because they walked away, they're on the upper hand, they're electropositive, so their internal state is not as disorganized or disheveled as yours. Yours is your internal energy are more disorderly, haphazard. You're in more of a shambled state in terms of your internal energies, whereas they who walked away, because again they walked out on their terms, so that puts them in a more stabilized state. Nonetheless, they are still somewhat destabilized. You can actually accelerate their destabilization. You can actually increase the velocity of their electropositive to electronegative if you understand how it works, but we'll talk about that another time. Again, don't distract yourselves. Go through the process. Allow the process to take its to teach you, to mold you, fashion, and show you, because in that that electronegative state, there's so many gems. There's amazing gems to be learned, but you will never learn and you will never earn or grasp these gems if you're distracting yourself with being a social butterfly or a socialite. You're actually, again, inhibiting and prohibiting and impeding your development as far as internal fortitude. You see, internal fortification can only be fortified by you actually staying in some form of isolation, some form of, you know, soul responsibility. This is my lot in life, and I accept it solely. Like I face this on my own. If you don't have that my ownness kind of attitude to face it, then your internal fortification will forever be, how would they call it, pudding. You'll be pudding, like Jello pudding pop. You poke your stomach and you just, like the Pillsbury Doughboy. The commercial doesn't come on anymore. I remember when in the 90s, that commercial used to come on all the time. Pillsbury Doughboy, you poke the stomach. But anywho, I digress. The point is, if you do not allow your internal, if you do not fortify yourself internally, because you got to remember, people in life, everyone's attracted to strength. Everyone's attracted to strength. No one's attracted to weakness. And there's a scientific explanation behind that. But again, that's another video. But you always got to understand, strength of character is something that people are drawn to naturally, like the moth to the flame. So you have to allow yourself to be fortified internally, not externally. We can go to the gym and work out and get external strength. That's muscles, which is good, fine. But internal fortification is strength of character, strength of dignity, integrity, strength of being able to weather the internal storms, to be able to have self-control, self-restraint, to be able to manage and maneuver your own emotions. That right there is internal fortification. You can only be fortified internally by allowing the electronegative state to actually working your way through the electronegative state and allowing it to teach you, and like I said, mold, shape, fashion, and or design you. And that cannot happen when you're distracting yourself with social events and being around, people that are fake smiles and, just whatever, right? So that you can feel good about yourself. And then when you go home, you feel depressed again. And then your depression is at, you even go to lower levels, right? So, understand that with each day, some days are going to be easier, some days are going to be harder. Visions will fly across your mind. Thoughts will zap in and out of you like frequencies, cycles. But as I mentioned before, watch them, be aware of them, be mindful of them. You're not your emotions, you're not your thoughts. You're a soul, you're a spirit, you're a spirit being. You are a derivative of God. You're derived from God. So you are a spinoff of the Most High. So you have to understand that this corporal flesh that we're in is just the vehicle that we need to be able to function on the physical plane. But you're not physical. Nothing about you is physical. And when you understand that, you start operating in the spiritual or the invisible, then you can fight this good fight. So again, folks, like I said, allow the electronegative state to fortify your internal energies and fortify yourself so that you can be a great leader one day, because there's a reason for everything, a purpose for everything has a purpose and meaning, and you might not be able to see it at the moment, but it will eventually materialize and manifest if you stay the course and keep your eyes on that prize. So again, how to handle breakups, process, go through it. Don't try to escape it. Don't try to let it burn. As I think there was a song, "Let It Burn" or something like that. But whatever. All right, till next time. Y'all know I've been cooking books, going through my own processes. Peace.